Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to another Henrico's Environmental Action Resource Team podcast. I'm Jeff Wydell, your host, and I'm really excited to have you all join us today. We are here to talk about another topic that's related to the environment. And one of the things that that Henrico County is involved in is regional efforts to try to get the environment cleaned up and really sustainable for the future. So I have two guests with me today. We have Sarah Stewart. Sarah is the REME Program Manager for PlanRVA. And we also have Steve Yob. Steve is the Deputy County Manager for Community Operations. And Steve is also the co-chair for the H.E.A.R.T Committee. So welcome. Glad you all could make it today. All right, so Sarah, first of all, I want to know REME. What does REME stand for?
REME is an acronym that we created. It stands for Resilience, Emergency Management, and Environment.
Right.
And instead of having that long-winded several-word spiel, we thought it would be a nice acronym and much more succinct.
Right. So in a nutshell, what is PlanRVA?
So PlanRVA is a planning district commission.
Mm-hmm.
We are a political subdivision of the state. We're a regional agency, and we work with localities in the Richmond region. If you look all across Virginia, you'll see planning district commissions throughout the state.
Right, right. Well, very good. So, Steve, one of the grand scheme of what we do with H.E.A.R.T is we try to be more sustainable and greener to help our community be more resilient. And so there's a program that has been in the works for a while now, and it's called the Climate Pollution Reduction Plan. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I sure can, and we're really delighted that we're working with Sarah and PlanRVA on this regional effort. Approximately a year ago, we were notified there was some opportunity for EPA grants, so we were successful in gaining that grant as being one of the 50 largest metropolitan statistical areas in the United States. Mm-hmm. We were a shoe-in, so we were able to receive that grant, and since then we've developed the primary climate action plan, and we're currently working very hard with Sarah and her staff on the comprehensive climate action plan.
Right. So this is part of a big program, and I missed the original name of it. Climate Resilience RVA is the program. Can you give me a synopsis of what the whole thing's about?
Yes. The intention of these grant funds out to the largest MSAs in some states that we're able to use it for is they call it a climate pollution reduction plan, but the focus in many ways is on greenhouse gas reduction and then the associated air reduction of the associated air pollution that you might see. When you reduce greenhouse gases, a lot of times you get other reductions in air pollution.
Right. So what are the one of the things that I think is cool, I was doing some research on this, and we were looking at the idea that this is a regionally cooperative effort. Steve, tell me a little bit about who's involved and why it's important to have a regional effort.
Well, all of the major counties in the city of Richmond are involved. The Native American tribes are involved, even some of the smaller communities out on the Middle Peninsula and out to New Kent. So all of the larger and smaller communities are involved. And, you know, together we can accomplish more than, say, little old Henrico could by itself.
Right.
And that is our plan. Did I miss anyone, Sarah? I think
It's a much bigger area. It's even bigger than the PlanRVA footprint.
Yeah.
PlanRVA serves 9 jurisdictions in the Metro Richmond area, but this is up in the teens. This is the metropolitan statistical area. It drops down into, say, Petersburg, to Tri-Cities area, and it even goes further west.
Well,
so
and you know, bigger. I was thinking the other day about kind of like this time of year when we're dealing with mosquitoes. You know, if you treat or you get rid of the standing water in your yard and things like that, and you really try to be mindful of mosquitoes in your yard, if your next door neighbor is really not doing much to try to get to manage that, you don't have the best bang for your buck.
Right.
So I really think that if we get together, we're going to have a much quicker response to the problems that we have right now.
That's
right. So what are the greenhouse gases? What are some of the things that we're looking to try to do to try to reduce some of these
So
emissions?
there are a wide variety of measures and potential projects that we can undertake to do this. And in fact, that's what we're looking at right now is kind of the full breadth across, say, the entire economy. What could happen? Some examples related to, say, transportation would be support or infrastructure for electric vehicles, or it might also be, say, trail or bike and pedestrian planning. So there are some examples in the transportation sector.
Right, right. So, Steve, you had mentioned that there are different phases of this program. Where are we right now with the whole thing?
Well, the primary plan was completed. It was submitted to the U.S. EPA in March, and we're now working on the comprehensive climate action plan, which will be due next August.
Right.
And at this time, in fact, we're soliciting and taking community feedback via a web form, which is on Resilient RVA. You can find it there if you'll search. And everyone should take that survey and provide their feedback. It's very important that we get as many diverse stakeholders as we can to weigh in on what's important to them.
And Sarah, I had noticed too that there have been some town hall meetings that people have been able to participate in. How did those go, and are they going to be continuing?
They went great. You will see some more. They did go. The ones that have occurred were fabulous. In fact, I'll plug it again. If you go to the Climate Resilience RVA webpage, if you do a search, it should pop up.
Right.
We will maintain future meetings we posted there that people can sign up for or show up and attend, depending on what the situation is. Those went fabulous. We had one for each kind of economic sector. So we had one that was focused on transportation, one that was focused on industry, one on waste and waste management, and so on. And some were larger, some were smaller, but we had a good group at all of them and a great discussion about possible measures or projects that we could consider across the region.
You know, there's a lot of different pieces to this whole project, and you mentioned waste management. How can waste management affect air quality?
So as waste decomposes, it releases methane and other gas. So that contributes to greenhouse gas reduction. There can also be other ways as we collect waste and then how we manage it, be it, do we put it in a landfill? Do we process it? Do we recycle it? Do we process it potentially for energy production or some other output? All of those present a different range of greenhouse gas emissions as an output,
right,
depending on what you do.
Right.
So,
you know, one of the things too, Steve, that the H.E.A.R.T committee is one of our tenets of things is that we try to focus on things that are things that Henrico County government can have an effect, a positive effect on the local and regional environment. And one of the things you had mentioned a while back was the misinformation about how much a local government can really have effect on air quality. And you had mentioned a statistic the other day about that.
Yeah, and you know, as a local government with our fleet, with our trucks that fix potholes, school buses, buildings that we own, and so on and so forth, we really only have about 5% of the contribution to greenhouse gases and global warming. The other 95% is automobiles, trucks on the road that private industry uses, commercial buildings. Of course, you mentioned landfills as being a source of greenhouse gases. All of these other things are the large majority. And, as a county, we can encourage, but most of those things are not within our control. I mean, we want to encourage conservation. But at the same time, I don't tell the automobile companies what their corporate average fuel economy is, or how many electric vehicles they're going to sell next year. That's obviously the federal government and the state government that are doing those things. So.
Right. And Sarah, you had mentioned too, I had in a presentation that you did, that this is a a recommendation. It's
Yes.
not a set of rules that have to be followed, correct?
Absolutely.
Right. So based on that, when Steve had mentioned that governments have a very small piece of the whole pie, what about the other 95%? How do we get the stakeholders,
Right.
know?
So some of it, I think, is education. Sometimes if people know better, they may do better or make different choices.
Right.
Some of it, there's a lot of opportunities, especially if we want to get creative with potential incentive programs through partnerships that may be just a locality, maybe a collection of localities within a region. It may be a locality and a state partnership, maybe a locality and another type of entity, either a business entity and or a nonprofit entity,
Right.
or some combination of all of those. So that incentive programs and those types of things are very much under discussion when we talk about what you might see in the different measures, essentially, and project ideas.
Right. So when we finish the phase 2, the comprehensive plan, what's going to be the result of that part of it?
So there will be the plan will be submitted to EPA. It will also be posted on the website, so everyone can go look at it. But then we will try to work with the various localities that are in the study area footprint, as well as other partners that we've tried to pull in and involve in the process to see what we can start to roll forward. We'll look for implementation grant funds. We will look for other ways that we can feed these into local or other policies or programs that may exist. And then in 2027, there will actually be a status report that is due to EPA about everything from updated data, that we may have collected or been gathered throughout the process, to progress on making those moving forward projects or measures. So we really will, throughout this process, we're going to be identifying what might our next steps be, what are what's the lowest hanging fruit, what's a logical connection to make, and then trying to roll that forward. But some of these will be a fairly long horizon. Some of them are short-term, low-hanging fruit. Some of them are going to take 10, 20 years to really especially to get into gear.
Right.
So.
And Steve, when we hear the year 2027, a lot of people, they want something right now because they're passionate about it. But the important things about this is that it takes time because it needs to be thought out properly, it needs to be vetted, and it needs to be something that's going to be the right thing to do, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And just, one thing to consider, for example, the county has 600 school buses. They're all diesel buses. If we wanted to electrify that fleet, we couldn't just do that tomorrow. Those school buses last on average 7 to 10 years. They're very expensive. The electric buses are even more expensive. And we don't have charging infrastructure at our depot that would be capable of charging that many buses overnight. So, you would have to upgrade wiring. You have to have additional electrical power coming in. And then, of course, as those school buses each year are replaced, at the rate of, 25, 30, 40, whatever it is per year we buy new, you could start turning the fleet over. But and that's pretty typical of a lot of capital purchases, even, your own car. I mean, some people I know buy a new car every 2 or 3 years because they like a new car. But, I'm one of those people that wears my car out. So my car is now, 8 years old, and it's still a youth as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I don't intend to buy a new one in the near term.
Right. And Sarah, one of the things, too, I think is kind of, and I know I'm jumping around with different things, but one of the things during your presentation is you mentioned that the end result is your PlanRVA is going to come up with a list of potential projects so that different localities can share their ideas, maybe team up with some things, but just overall, okay, this is something that is going to be not in stone, but tangible.
Yes. In many ways, you could almost see just kind of a menu of opportunity. Certain projects or measures may make more sense in a more urban area, or in a more suburban area, or in a more rural area.
Right.
we'll write those into the plan as such, but it will be a menu of options that people have kind of to choose from, and it will say who, likely actors might be. But it will be something, in many ways, it will be a living document, and that's what that status report lets us do in many ways.
Right.
So it's not intended to be a document that is produced and sits on a shelf and looks nice sitting on a shelf.
Right.
It is meant to be an actionable process, basically, that has a document to help direct people in the future.
That's great. Well, what else?
Well, Jeff, everyone is eager to see some progress. And what I would ask folks who are watching is, start making changes yourself. Just make changes at your home. We talked about waste a little bit. The hierarchy of waste is reduce, reuse, and recycle. And note the order. So reduce. If you don't need to buy it, don't buy it, or don't buy so much of it. Reuse what you can't otherwise use in some other fashion, give it to a friend, whatever. And then finally, recycle. Recycle does cost the county money, and I guarantee everything we collect, we do recycle.
Right.
Some people don't believe that, but it is true. Recycling, of course, we want to do that. And then the last thing is put it in the trash, which then goes to the dump, and we don't want to do that.
Right.
But you can compost at home. As another little thing you can do. I walked over here. My building is about a mile from here, but I chose to walk. Use the stairs instead of the elevator. Conserve water. Don't water your lawn so much, or not at all. I quit watering my lawn. Recycle your leaves instead of putting them out to the curb.
Right.
There's a lot of little things that a homeowner can do, and the more people do and be an example to others, the more we're going to have traction for all that we're trying to accomplish. So that's what I would challenge folks today to do.
Right. To use the term, this really is a village project where it's just so awesome that everybody has an opportunity to weigh in on this.
Yes.
Everybody has an opportunity to share resources. And I just think it's awesome that it's something it's very meaningful and it's something that's important. So, Sarah, PlanRVA, can I give you one more opportunity for a shout out for a website?
Yes. Everyone go to climateresilientrva.org. That should bring it up. That should take you straight to it. You can go to the planrva.org webpage, and that's got a button on the front that'll get you there too. Go take the survey by the end of July.
Right.
And we'd love to have your feedback. You can otherwise submit it through a form there. Go look at the first plan, the Priority Climate Action Plan, and please engage with us, because this really is a plan for everybody.
And this is a H.E.A.R.T podcast. So if you want to have more information about what we are, you can go to henrico.gov/H.E.A.R.T, and you can get more information from us. And also, for the people that aren't listening, that people are seeing that this podcast, Stewart, our turtle, the mascot, is on the table. And Stewart reminds us to not only reduce, reuse, and recycle, but to also be good stewards of the environment. So I really appreciate y'all coming out today and shared some really great stuff. And there you have it.
All right. Thank you.
Goodbye.